So one of the law firms I was talking to recently in Arizona, it's a PI firm. Typically when you get hit with a discovery request, you take, try to push it off a little bit, or you take a week or two to respond. And one of the things you can do with Eve is Eve actually has a feature to go and comprehensively reply to a discovery request, going over all the case files it already has access to. And this gentleman just replied the same day. He got a discovery request and just boom, right back the same day. And then just he received like a question mark, question mark, question mark back from defense. And it just kind of like flips the script. And, those are like little bits of tactics where the tactics are already starting to change based on what AI gives you access to.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time this podcast finds you. Welcome to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Got a great guest today. Jay Berkowitz is with Jay Madheswaran, and we're going to learn all about his story, and we're going to learn about how they just achieved $1 billion valuation. Quick commercial, as always, for 10 Golden Rules. Today, we're going to be talking about an incredible legal AI. And there's something amazing happening with AI, artificial intelligence, in Google search. And we think we've figured it out at 10 Golden Rules. So if you're not showing up in those Google AI overviews, the Google ChatGPT style search results, give us a shout at 10 Golden Rules. Just go to 10goldenrules.com and contact me through the AI chat on the website. And we'll be happy to walk you through the AI on Google and how you can get ranked in the Google AI. But without further ado, let's get to today's guest because we have some really exciting news. Jay, welcome to the 10 Golden Rules Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's nice to meet a fellow Jay.
All right, good. Look, let's get to the big news here. Tell us about the company. Tell us about how you achieved $1 billion round, and then we'll do your background after we do the foreground.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. And thank you for the opportunity. So I'm Jay. We recently, a few days ago, announced launching and raising $103 million Series B at $1 billion valuation for Eve. What Eve is an AI platform for plaintiff law. Unlike ChatGPT answering questions on documents, we effectively go much deeper into the workflows and do things with pure AI that used to take hours upon hours of manual labor to do. Think in the personal injury space, things like producing a really comprehensive medical chronology that's continuously updated quickly in 10, 15 minutes out of 4,000 medical record pages, and taking it all the way through the case lifecycle into demands and discovery request responses, etc., all the way to resolution. And now we're also layering in intake. And the reason why we've been able to, I think, raise so much money is actually thanks to momentum. Basically, I was in a conference a few weeks ago and I asked the crowd out of 200 attorneys, how many people have used AI? 90% of them raised their hand compared to the year before where maybe 5 people, gently raised their hand. Just the level of awareness people are seeing towards AI is incredible. But what's missing, Jay, is them figuring out how to implement it in their firm. And how do I get adoption? Because you don't want to spend all this money on AI and not see value for your clients or yourself. And that's the core problem we focused on solving is how do you navigate this, legal AI minefield and pick the right provider and get actual results. And the reason why we were able to raise a large round is a lot of our customers are renewing, we're growing, and we're showing results.
So you got the tech and you got the results. That's awesome.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit more about Eve. Like, what practice areas are you focused on?
So largely, again, plaintiff heavy ones. So think personal injury, labor and employment. Those are our 2 immediate practice areas that we service today. We started the company focused on labor and employment, and we moved into personal injury last year.
Great. I guess now let's tell the story a little bit. You were telling me some interesting stories. You were born in India and came to America. So tell us your journey.
Yes, I think this is why plaintiff law appeals to me so much is my story has been one of like the under-resourced against the well-resourced for quite some time. And, in India, I grew up in the lower middle class with where we had to like ration water and things like that, which looking back, it was actually, I remember it fondly. It was fun. But, if I had to do it today, I'd probably be very stressed. But, that leaves an impression on you, right? So when I came to America, I worked really hard to educate myself. And that really beautiful thing about America is it's incredibly meritocratic, right? So if you do give value to someone else, it's typically rewarded. And that led me into kind of this journey of becoming a founder where I did a pit stop at Facebook early on as one of their early engineers focused on Facebook groups where we helped align people with similar principles together. And then I was the first engineering hire for this company called Rubrik, where we built really secure solutions to three-letter agencies. How do you protect the world's most secure data? To becoming an investor myself, and then finally starting Eve with a team that I respect and love to work with.
And how did you guys pick law as an area to focus on?
The really interesting thing is AI, we've actually been doing AI for even before LLMs. So when our team got started, we were working on extracting very bespoke information from contracts and bank statements and these very highly variant doc types. Computer vision and OCR wasn't good. So we had actually created like this NLP based model. NLP stands for natural language processing, that's able to understand text and pull information out. And many of our customers were, in fact, legal tech and law firms. And what became clear for us, given we were so ingrained in this technology, is we were constantly dealing with this question around like, when is accuracy good enough? When do you need people in the loop? And how do you introduce people in the loop? When is it okay to be pure AI? And all of these little learnings led to an aha moment for us in plaintiff law, where we saw for the first time, a chance to kind of flip the script on defense, where historically plaintiffs had need to be a lot more principled with how they manage their time because you typically get paid in contingencies. And defense, especially insurance companies, sometimes are able to fund quite the battle against you and kind of drown you out. And there's an incentive alignment where on the plaintiff side, you actually want to adopt AI and be as efficient as possible because ultimately you want to put your best attorney on every single thing dealing with the client, right? All the way from intake, if you could, into sending out client comms, emails, maybe even case manager work. Like that's what you would want if you could, but you're labor constrained. And with AI and what we were building, our platform was able to actually customize and learn from a firm and be able to go deeper in these workflows. And that allowed a way to level the playing field and kind of flip the script. And that to me, for some reason, is, both mentally stimulating and emotionally very encouraging. So that's what led us to go down this path.
Right. So try and make it really simple. I'm a PI firm. I haven't really done much with AI. Maybe I'm just using Chat GPT. What's a simple step for a PI firm to get started with AI?
The easiest thing you can do is adopt something like Eve and get started, most likely for pre-litigation work. That's where you see a lot of value right away because it happens pretty frequently and there's a lot of manual repetitive tasks you are doing. So the good way to get started is actually start with medical chronologies, right? So you upload all the records, medical records you have, along with any other office visit information, and Eve is able to go through thousands upon thousands of pages in a few minutes and actually provide and categorize really comprehensive visit timelines. It even highlights things you should be looking for, like bad facts, and gives you a rough understanding of economic and non-economic damages that you can then seamlessly, using Eve, carry over into a demand letter where you can get it to write like your best work and repeat it without hopefully any errors.
So basically, get through all the files really quickly, get through all the data, come up with the best positioning for your case, detailed medical chronology, demand letter, done for you. Obviously, the lawyer wants to oversee it, but it saves you a ton of time. And like you said, it evens the playing field a little bit with the defense firms.
Yeah, and I have so many like fun stories there in terms of clever ways in which our clients are evening the playing field and kind of scaring defense in some
Great,
cases.
great. There's
One of
give us
the
one and then give us a fun one.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the law firms I was talking to recently in Arizona, it's a PI firm. Typically when you get hit with a discovery request, you take, try to push it off a little bit, or you take a week or two to respond. And one of the things you can do with Eve is Eve actually has a feature to go and comprehensively reply to a discovery request, going over all the case files it already has access to. And this gentleman just replied the same day. He got a discovery request and just boom, right back the same day. And then just he received like a question mark, question mark, question mark back from defense. And it just kind of like flips the script. And, those are like little bits of tactics where the tactics are already starting to change based on what AI gives you access to.
Yeah, a similar story, but I got a request to write an article for one of the major industry publications. And I'd recently done a webinar on the topic. Actually, it was the topic of AI search results. And so I took the transcript of the webinar, which was done by AI, uploaded it into a GPT, gave it a really good prompt. And I said, reference the 10 Golden Rules blog and reference Jay Berkowitz's YouTube channel and write this article in the style of Jay Berkowitz and make 3 salient points and do it in 800 words. And what I got back was simply fantastic summary of my webinar. So it was my work, it was my words, but it was written for me. I changed maybe 3 or 4 words and sent it back immediately in about 45 minutes. They were
Isn't that
similarly,
amazing?
wait, we picked the topic. We asked you to write the article. We gave you about 20 days. You did it in about 20 minutes. That's the power of AI today. So that's great. What's the scale and scope? How many firms today are using Eve?
We're close to about 500 firms today using Eve.
Uh,
And again, one of the things we focus on is adoption. We're trying to get better and better at this, but it's a combination of how the technology works, how easy it is to use. Eve actually suggests, based on what it sees in your case data, what questions you should ask it even. So that's one of the ways in which we encourage adoption and proper usage. And including many of our support team members are actually ex-attorneys themselves, or even practicing once in some cases.
Great.
And we found that's pretty important because again, one thing I keep repeating internally in the company and externally is like, it really is a merger of people, process, and technology. You have to get all of the three components working well together. Otherwise, you just don't see the results you would want.
I asked you for a simple tip of how someone could get started. Maybe give us that medium to advanced tip. How are some of the more sophisticated applications working? Some firms have been using the technology now for some time.
It goes into, kind of this prompt fine tuning that you mentioned before, Jay, that you did for your AI search blog post. But Eve has a similar feature where you can actually train Eve to respond like your best work every single time. So what you do is effectively you drag and drop a few of your exemplary demands, let's say that you wrote you're super proud of, into Eve, and it creates a thing called a blueprint. And now for every new case going forward, it actually applies the same letterhead, same formatting, same reasoning that you use to kind of come up with those points. And it does all of that for you automatically. So the first draft that you end up with ends up being significantly higher quality. And of course, you get all the hallucination prevention features you would expect, like it cites it, references the information, as well as does a bunch of things to ensure it's not hallucinating. And ultimately, like what you end up doing is you start thinking about your business in a different way. You start thinking about your business, and these are the bespoke workflows I can upload into Eve and turn into a software component. And then what do I do with my staff, and how do I improve how they review it and how thoughtful they are in implementing it? So kind of getting that motion going is a bit advanced, but it pays huge dividends if you do it right.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about the raising of money and the seed rounds. The headline of this webinar is going to be something about raising your seed round and $1 million valuation. I'm speaking for my marketing folks because we haven't written it yet, of course. Tell us a little bit about the founder's journey and how you achieved different tranches and raised some money in this most recent raise, maybe with an eye to your friend who you mentioned is just doing a startup this week, or firms that are going through that first and second round of raise.
Absolutely. I mean, fundraising is never easy, but we've been fortunate. A lot of our founding members come from places like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Rubrik. And I had the privilege of working with my co-founders, Matt and David at Rubrik. And these are some of the smartest people I think you'll ever meet. They ran really, really large teams and initiatives at their respective companies. And without them, what we've built so far would be very difficult. But the way these things go, it starts with a dream and you show, hey, the dream is turning into reality. And that's how you raise money. So the dream initially was around, we had this idea that we actually could drastically change plaintiff law when everyone else was focused on defense, right? Historically, that's, at least for legal tech, that's where the money used to be. And most plaintiff firms are much smaller and also they don't pay much, relatively speaking. And that's a really difficult thing to solve as a legal tech company. However, we took a bet that this software is so valuable that it actually changes how plaintiff law firms will operate, and it'll turn them into AI native firms first, even before defense firms can. So that was a bet we took, and we showed that it worked, right? So that the hard part to solve for us during the seed round, I think we raised about 14 million or so in the seed Series A round. The hard part there was effectively showing that AI can actually do it, right? So the problem with technology and AI is it doesn't matter if it's 90% accurate if what you really needed was 95% accurate. Suddenly the whole software doesn't work. So let's say you go into Eve and you ask a question and it only gives you the right answer 20% of the time, no one's going to use it, right? So solving that piece was what took a lot of our time in the seed stage. So we ended up iterating constantly. You have to be careful. We can't really use the data for training. So we had to be quite clever and thoughtful about how we made the software such that it's actually able to answer all the complicated questions across the case lifecycle for any type of case within labor and employment or personal injury, which turns out is a lot, right? So you have, moving vehicle accidents, labor and employment, you dive deeper into different causes of actions that all result in different types of work. And getting all of that right it felt like a death by a million cuts, but eventually we came up with some clever ways of simplifying it and implementing a software. And we were actually the very first provider to do this entire thing end to end with AI when everyone else was shipping it overseas to get you back a demand letter, Metcron, or something along those lines. And once that happened, we raised our Series A from Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the well-known firms in the Valley, and I guess now the world. They've been raising a lot of money. And they kind of saw the vision because a lot of our early customers were using it every day. And they were starting to see signs of, hey, we're actually taking on, 2x the case capacity of the same staff. This, we just didn't think it could happen. And Andreessen took a bet that, hey, this looks promising and funded us really well. Like they gave us $47 million. And then that was in January this year. And then we just continued building. And what we really focused on is eventually what plaintiff lawyers want is they want a tool that is cheap, goes deeper into their workflows, and keeps innovating and launching new features to go and deliver as much as they can for their clients in the shortest amount of time. Right? That's really at the end of the day what you care about.
What does cheap mean? What's the starting cost for Eve for a PI firm or a defense firm? And then is it per person, and how does the pricing scale?
Yeah, so typically it is a price per case. That's how we charge it. I've been in trouble for mentioning this before. If you ever change it, it causes us problems. So I maybe will refrain from saying it, but it's usually a few $100s per case, depending on various factors.
And that certainly makes sense from what I know about how they price their cases and the expenses that go into it. And
That's right.
I know I've had this conversation with probably a dozen people on this podcast, from transcriptionists to different softwares to investigators and folks who work on the cases. So a couple $100 for the AI is nothing relative to
That's right. I mean, if a lot of people don't do this, but, typically when you start growing your firm, you start getting into it. But a lot of firms, when you actually break down the costs related to servicing a case on a per case basis, you end up finding that something like 30% goes towards marketing and potentially even 50% goes towards the actually servicing the case. And then you have miscellaneous expenses, which adds up. And your profit margins are relatively thinner than they need to be. And what the hope of AI is that you're able to basically trade the labor costs for software costs over time. And in exchange, you can use the additional labor that's been freed up to actually take on more cases. That'd be the transition, right? So I kind of see, actually, interestingly, Jay, I do think like more money is going to go towards marketing. Interestingly, if when AI starts really getting good, right? Like think the
Yeah.
average attorney is able to handle 100 cases per month. I think we are going to probably see more money flowing towards marketing and that becoming one of the central areas in which you differentiate yourself against other
Yeah,
firms.
for sure. If you're a very smooth AI operation and the time and the cost to run those cases goes down, you want to get more of the cases. But the
That's
pie's
right.
only so big. So that's
That's
where
right.
the
And
bloody promotion comes about, right?
it's true, but what is really fascinating is our law firms are choosing to do different things with that added time.
Yeah.
So for example, like some end up becoming significantly operationalized for, let's say, subset of cases, right? Like MVAs or dog bites or what have you.
Yeah.
You get really specialized for those cases and you're able to handle so much because you're focused on it. Alternatively, some others are using the fact that because once you start working with Eve starts learning the entire case lifecycle and starts learning your history of cases. So you can actually start qualifying, let's say, more cases for litigation because you're able to do kind of the heavy work of litigation much more efficiently now. And it's a very different approach, but they're seeing much higher settlement checks when they don't settle in relay.
Yeah. I don't know if you and I were having this conversation or someone else. And you mentioned this earlier, the defense firms have had AI and have had sophisticated computational ability for some time. And now they have a pretty good snapshot of each firm's capabilities and how often they go to court and how often they litigate. And so the defense firms are making a snapshot of the valuation of the case based on the likelihood of the firm's ability to make their case. So the software again levels the playing field like you talked about, but it's like AI versus AI. What do you know about that defense side software?
Defense side software is large. I mean, it's split across the board, right? They're also trying to figure out what to do. You see some players like Harvey helping out defense firms, where they'd be helping with synthesis of information, kind of like ChatGPT, but for law.
Yeah.
That's the most common one we've seen so far. But the challenge there is their workflows are so diverse and their business model is so different. If you're a defense firm, you care about retaining one client over a long period of time and kind of increasing the value of your billables over time. And that leads to very different product building and what they care about. So I think that's where kind of the products differentiate. But I think you should probably also expect they're also going to adopt AI solutions pretty soon, mostly driven by, I think, us and plaintiff workflows, right? Let's say the amount of volume of work suddenly explodes by 5x for them to respond back. They're going to have to look at solutions.
That's great. You mentioned it briefly a minute ago, talking about new product development. So, how do you guys create your list? How do you figure out what to develop next? And then tell us a little bit about the intake product, your newest product.
Absolutely. So, the way we develop is, again, we're architecture first. So what we care about is combining, again, broken record, people, technology, process all together. And the product helps as much as possible with that. But the way it's architected, we worked closely with Anthropic, OpenAI to come up with our architecture. It's done in a way that is always going to benefit from new advancements from AI, right? So even if AGI comes, we're still going to be the best way to use AGI for plaintiff law. And that was very important to us. But a really useful side effect of that architecture is really, really quick innovation of literally anything AI that comes out. So as a result, I'm sure many of your viewers probably have seen or heard about these voice AIs starting to come out, right? So now AI is actually able to listen to you and talk back to you. If you have ChatGPT, you can click this little voice button and she'll talk to you, or he, depends on you can change the gender if you would like.
Yeah.
And a lot of our law firms are actually asking for that because one of the difficulties is now that Eve is helping accelerate pre-lit and litigation workflows, they actually want to take on more clients. So now that's starting to become bottleneck. And I'm sure one of the toughest thing that everyone is seeing is you never want to miss a $10 million case. The time you'll realize some other settlement happened for $10 million that actually came through your intake and you passed it or didn't respond quickly enough, it hurts, right? I mean, it also hurts them because they're getting seen to much slower. And that's something we can solve because that's largely blocked by labor, training, and improvements. So what our Eve intake does is it has multiple different components working together, right? We're aiming to not really replace the intake team. We want to make them better. So Eve is able to integrate with existing telephony providers like Zoom, RingCentral, et cetera, to automatically categorize and almost like light up missed opportunities, right? And that then helps you coach and come up with different SOPs to handle intake. And even more cool, at least for me, is the same SOP documents you create in a Word file or what have you. You could actually upload right to Eve, and that configures the voice agent for you. And now the voice agent is not like the IVRs we're used to, where it's like, press one to continue, yada, yada, yada. It's actually a dynamic one that understands and follows more complex directions you want to give it. So for example, if a customer ever, or client rather, ever mentions like a headache, maybe you dive a bit deeper into TBI related questions. And those are things that's hard to train. Exactly. Those are like hard to train staff to do. And Eve, because it's built on the same intelligence that we've kind of built it for pre-lit and litigation for, it's able to bring that intelligence into the call center.
I mentioned the simple GPT project I did for myself. And one of the things I skipped was the key step to writing a great prompt is giving the AI a role. And so I said, when I wrote that prompt to write an article for myself, I said, you're one of the world's top business writers and you write for magazines and website blogs, and you give the GPT a role and you specify the tone and the style and the expertise you want it to bring to the project. I imagine you had to make Eve an attorney. How did you read in legal intelligence? And just another side note, I understand GPT-4 was in the 90th percentile of passing the bar. So I don't know where it got all that intelligence, but maybe you can tell us, and maybe you can tell us, did you send Eve to law school?
We basically did. I think that the challenging part is technology has gotten to the point where it's not a simple put data in, get some data out type of challenges anymore. Because what we care about again is shortening the time end to end for something like a demand or a Metcron. It's not just important the first draft is good, but you want to get to the last draft as quickly as possible. And this is where at least I have trouble using generalized AI tools, right? Like ChatGPT. I also use it for blog creation and sometimes writing LinkedIn posts, sorry. And it's always the last bit that takes a lot of time. And then I'm stuck wondering, should I even have used this to begin with? I could have just written this myself. And that's the same challenge people have trying to use it when you actually know what you're doing, in a topic you know a lot about is getting it to actually be a system. So to make that happen, we had to go and train hundreds, if not thousands, of little AI models to have this attorney-like reasoning in different steps, right? So for example, like in a demand, you have to know when is the right time to go crawl a medical record and when is the right time to double down and look for other related things. Again, we mentioned TBI before, but let's say you see something related to TBI, you actually want to pull that up and highlight, hey, this could be something that we missed to check for. And we may want to talk to the client to go get some additional testing done. And those are things where we have to go train very specific things for, right? So it's not just that it's a AI attorney in terms of what it knows, but the workflows and knowing how to do the work is something no one knows, right? Like at least ChatGPT doesn't have that information. And that's really more of what we're tweaking on is how do we keep track of how do you do the work, right? And we train on that per firm. And then Eve actually starts getting better and doing that work. And it manifests itself in really cool ways, like that advanced feature I mentioned to you, where you can drag and drop your top demands and it just starts thinking like you in terms of how you wrote that.
What's the plan for all of this? I see interspersed Venn diagrams where all of the case management software are building some AI capability. At the back end, we're big fans of Case Status and Hona, who do customer service, and they have some AI built into that step where once the case is in your case management software, they give you proactive communications that go out to the consumer and tell them what's happening with their case. Then you all are at the front end of managing the case and giving the attorneys tons of capability and the medical chronologies and the demand letters. And now you're getting into intake, and then there's intaker and the intake software at the front end. And so I see all these Venn diagrams sort of merging. Is that what's going to happen? Like someone is going to be the best across the board at some point very soon?
Again, putting my VC hat on, right? So this is a question we had to answer for many industries. The question that you're asking is like, does best of breed win or does an all-in-one platform win? And the answer is never clear. Historically, in all basically verticals, it flips back and forth. Sometimes you end up going best of breed, and then sometimes you end up going converged. My anticipation of how this goes is we're focused on one thing and one thing very clearly, which is how do we serve a client as quickly as possible, right? And get the highest settlement possible. And the only things we care about are the workflows. So the actual work you'd be doing when people are pulled in, how do we make that as effective as possible? And that requires a decent amount of focus and building, right? At least for us so far, it has. And from what we can tell, it's going to involve that way. And so that's ultimately what we're focused on. So with intake, we kind of view the rest as side effects. Like if you want to partner with other softwares, and we do, that handles, let's say, the telephony part of intake really well, or they handle one part of insight really well that we don't necessarily think is critical for shortening the client's time to close a case, then we don't do it. We focus on what we do best, which is the AI components. So that's how we're viewing it. I expect it to evolve though. Like what I'm probably envisioning is I think that law firms will buy one AI software and potentially a CRM, depending on which workflows and data management tools they need. And then I think everything else will become kind of bespoke, right? Meaning you'll want to solve a very specific problem. Like if you have a specific problem with client communications, Hona and case status are great, right? And you want to look into them. And if you want to solve a very, in the future, let's say way down the future, you have one very specific type of deposition you want to do, it's possible you go and buy an agent just for that one day. I don't think we're quite there yet. And there's benefit to having something in one platform. Like, for example, Eve is able to learn from your past cases, which makes all the workflows better. So there's some benefit there. But I think we're going to have to evolve with the industry here.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar for us at a digital agency. And I think it goes to the buyer's mindset. Some people are going to look for the best all in one solution. Some people are going to look for the best solution in each of the verticals. So some people come to us because we can build a great website, beautiful, high converting website. We manage SEO, social media, do a lot of great video, pay per click, local service ads, very strong across the board. And people like to have a one stop shop. And then some people come to us and they say, can you just manage our pay per click, or can you guys help us with just SEO? Because I have vendors for the other things, and their mindset is they're shopping for the best in each vertical.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe it's more up to the buyers in the future. You briefly mentioned AGI, which is basically the all-knowing, all-seeing, intelligent AI, right? Where it's more intelligent than humans. Talk a little bit, please, about AGI and what you see for the future of AGI and the future for our industry.
Absolutely. So this is actually a conversation I had a few days ago with some OpenAI employees, right? And basically, the definition of AGI is that no one actually really knows what AGI means. So it's turning into a spectrum now, right? Before the term was thrown around to mean something like a godlike creature that knows everything, can do everything. That's what I think people tried to imply it was. What we're heading into now is more of a, it gets better at this one other thing next year and this one other thing the year after. That seems to be the path we're on right now, where it starts getting these capabilities and it just so happens people use it. I mean, if you think about even today, what tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, these things can do, it's ridiculous, right? Like it can do a lot and we're just taking it for granted. And in fact, we get annoyed with it when it doesn't get exactly what we're thinking right. And it hasn't really changed the world in the way I think you would, at least from the marketing, the way they kind of talk about it, you would expect it to. And that's because, again, I repeat this, but like technology, people, process, all of that has to combine and work together. And that's going to take time. The other thing is, as we approach, let's say, AGI, I think the world will change around it. And it's not going to be all instantaneous. So, for example, let's say next year, AI reaches superhuman levels of intelligence in material science or something. And then it starts inventing a new product every year. Then the whole world will kind of change a little bit to accommodate for that capability. And we're all going to have to adapt. But eventually, like I'm of the opinion that I think we have a purpose and we have a reason to exist. And worst case scenario, we can turn off the AI. So I think we'll find a reason to survive.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think there's a lot of fear out there about AI. And I think I was listening to the Google CEO on an interview talking about AI. And the interviewer asked, what's the future for AI at Google, or what's coming up in the next year? And he said, well, the beauty of AI is it allows us to do projects quicker and less expensively. We're saving about 10% from our planned 2025 budget for development. And so now we can do about 10% more projects. And I think that's the optimistic view, is that AI will free up humans to do even more amazing things by getting rid of the easiest, simplest tasks and perhaps some of those simplest jobs. And the one thing I worry about is the training jobs, right? Like the young person at a digital agency isn't as required. The young developers that you all would have employed in the past aren't required. And the young attorneys and paralegals won't be as important.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that is temporary because eventually what you want to do is figure out what people are really good at and utilize that with AI to increase productivity. And right now we're just in a phase where I think we haven't figured out exactly what we're good at and what AI is good at.
Yeah.
So I anticipate that will change pretty quickly. And we're seeing some of that actually already. Even for us, we've only hired senior engineers across the board for very many similar reasons to what she mentioned. And we're seeing the new generation that's grown up with pure AI, which exists now. I don't think I even had a phone growing up for a long time. They are thinking about problems in a very different way. And it's causing some really incredible new changes, right? And I think we're just entering that phase. And I think we haven't, I think we'll be fine. My
Yeah.
optimistic look on life.
Talked about digital natives and the way that generation comes to projects, but now you're saying AI digital native coders would just envision the solution so much further ahead than I possibly could. So, anyways, thank you for sharing this fascinating journey. I'll just get to the final questions. We've done this on this podcast for probably like close to 15 years, and we ask this sort of short one-liners. And this will be a great question and answer for someone like yourself, because I imagine you're covering 1,000 topics every week. So, what apps or techniques do you use for personal productivity?
I tend to use Gemini Deep Research or Deep Research in any one of these providers quite a bit. For example, even before this interview, Deep Research found everything about you, Jay, and the 10 golden rules and helped me prepare, for this podcast.
What's the most interesting thing it shared?
I think basically it talked about you advertising for things like Coca-Cola, which I didn't know about. That's really cool. And talked about your philosophy behind the 10 golden rules and found some things about you and also like how you like to interview people. So it actually did a pretty thorough job, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And it saved you from going to my LinkedIn, where it would have said that I was a former director of marketing for Coca-Cola, and listening to all my podcast interviews on our YouTube channel, etc.
Exactly.
It just, so deep research. So what kind of prompt did you write in Gemini Deep Research?
So Gemini Deep Research works a little bit differently to OpenAI, where you can actually tweak the plans it comes up with.
Yeah.
So what I typically do is like, just, hey, I'm having this meeting coming up, very casual, like meeting coming up with Jay. And, he runs 10 golden rules, help me prepare for it. And it comes up with a plan. And I just go edit the plan of, no, I mean, this is, I think it hooked on your marketing services more so than
Yeah.
helping me prepare the podcast. I'm like, no, that's not what I want. Yeah. Do this instead, do this instead.
Fantastic. I love it. Do you have a personal wellness and fitness routine?
Yes, my wife and I actually wake up at 5:30 every morning, and we have a gym that we built in the house,
Great.
and we work out with a trainer from Croatia of all things. And that is I think been the biggest change because like, I'm sure you know this too. I have a kid, and as soon as he wakes up, the day goes to it becomes all around him.
He's
So
in
we get at
charge.
least
Yeah.
exactly. We get at least an hour of alone time working out before that happens, which is I think makes me happy.
I heard a line recently. The heaviest thing that you have to lift in the gym is the door to get yourself inside.
We
And
solve that problem.
right here at home, that's
And
super
the
easy.
same thing with the trainer. The trainer just calls and you can't, it's rude to hang up. So you pick it up and you have nothing better to do than work out.
You have to let him in, right? Just
Exactly.
front door. That's awesome. What do you recommend as your best business books?
Ooh, I kind of have an unconventional answer, which is these aren't actually business books, but Nassim Taleb, he's like a mathematician. He's written probably famous books like Black Swan. There's one that I like in particular called Anti-Fragile, and it's really meant more from a market perspective, like how does a market become less fragile? But I found a lot of those principles are actually applicable to how you run your life in a way in which it's not fragile, right? So what happens if most people, if you don't get the next paycheck, you don't know what to do with your life. And kind of rethinking your life and structuring it in a way where, like he says, anti-fragile, I found to make a pretty big impact. And I think probably what pushed me on the entrepreneurial journey.
Love it. What blogs, podcasts, or YouTubes do you subscribe to? And when something hits your feed, you stop everything else and listen to.
It's a good question. For the longest time, I used to like this podcast called the Founders Podcast, where it was like it goes through biographies of old founders and spends a bit more time thinking about their thought process, which I enjoy more so than the history. So that was one for a long time. I think more recently, just given how quickly AI is moving, there's one called AI Daily Brief, which is unfortunately today is quite ads heavy, but it basically captures all the latest developments in AI on a daily basis, and there's a lot happening every day these days.
Give you a chance
Uh,
to catch up. Yeah.
exactly, and it gives me a chance to kind of catch up on my commute to work.
Yeah. The founder's approach, like a lot of people say, read biographies, which
Yes,
I try and intersperse with business books and AI books.
I think the
Um,
Ride of a Lifetime is a really good one for the audience. The Disney one.
Great. What is your NFL or sports team?
I have a bad answer here, which is I don't actually watch any sports. Back when I was really into tennis, I loved watching anything with Federer or Nadal, but unfortunately those two are retired now. I haven't kept
And
up
now
with
you're
it. Yeah,
crunched.
exactly.
Hey, well, look, Alcaraz Sinner, when you're ready to find some time for tennis, it looks like it's going to be the next great
Oh, is that right?
some of those matches. Oh yeah, yeah. Just watch the Wimbledon final. It was fantastic.
Okay, I'll load up the highlights.
Yeah, and the French Open, U.S. Open. These guys have won, I think, 8 of the last 8
Oh,
majors
wow.
between the two of them. So, last two questions. What's a great introduction for you? Who should we send Eve's way?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to reach us is at our website. So it's eve.legal. And we're growing pretty rapidly. If you want to join us as well, if you're into building the next generation of plaintiff law, please apply. We're looking for all sorts of people. And I would be encouraged if you guys just tested it out. Like we have a free demo and pilot. And typically, even if you don't end up purchasing, you'll know what to do, hopefully, to speed up your day. And at minimum, I would love to kind of gift that to you.
Fantastic. And where can people get in touch with you?
So I'm found on LinkedIn with my very difficult to spell last name, Jayanth Madheswaran. And you can also follow Eve Legal at LinkedIn as well. And our Twitter presence isn't great. We're trying to get better at it. And if you have any things you want to add, just message us somewhere and we'll get back to you.
Hey, here's my marketing tip that makes all that easy. And that is just produce one piece of content like every week, or in you guys' case, every day. And one of the best things to do is just answer a question. So
Ooh, okay.
if you just like to take questions that you're getting from customers or even better prospects, answer
That's
one
a great idea.
day. And then what we do for our clients is we cascade that. So you're probably not going to have time, but you could have like maybe one of your marketing people just answer that question and run around to the different texts and get the answer. And if you do it on video, it's great. You put it on YouTube and all the socials, and then we call it cascading, like a river cascades over a waterfall and creates mini waterfalls and mini rivers, little streams. That one answer becomes the first piece of content on YouTube or wherever. And then it's just super easy for your marketing folks to cascade it everywhere else. That at least gives you a baseline presence on Twitter and TikTok and Insta and everywhere else. And all of a sudden, you've just got really helpful, valuable content as a baseline. And obviously, if you can do really smart social on top of that's great.
Jay, you're giving me all sorts of ideas. I'm going to put this into action right away, actually. This is great.
It's my TED talk that I just haven't done yet.
You should do it. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm amazed because I've been talking about it for 10 years, but nobody else has done the TED talk. So, but Jay, thank you so much. This was great. And everyone, check out Eve. And if you haven't dipped your toe in the AI waters, you're overdue. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the 10 Golden Rules of Internet Marketing for Law Firms podcast. Please send questions and comments to podcast@10goldenrules.com. That is podcast@TENgoldenrules.com.